for you, and I think you could do it without essentially losing any animation. But let me just do this super quickly. Okay, you've got this guy, you've got this guy. And you've got this guy. Okay, so if this were me, Kane, and I was going into spline for this shot, which you can do this on your shot that's already animated and keep your animation the same. But if this were me, what I would do is I would create a NURBS curve, circle, modify. You know what? I'll name this NURBS circle octopus underscore COG. I'm just going to put it in a group node. I'm going to call it octopus underscore COG. And then I'm octopus cog group. There we go. And then I'm going to select the group, modify, match translation. And then I'm just going to scale it up, okay? I'm going to scale it up relatively big just so it's easy to see. But essentially the same thing I was talking about to you in your shot, I think I would do a little bit differently, and I'll show how. So I would do parent cog, child, neck number 2 control. Constrain parent. That way, if I move this, this moves along with it. And then if I move this, this moves individually, right? And then I would go parent, child, neck control number 1, constrain parent. So that way, if I move this, the second neck control moves along. But then I'm going to take the blend parent and turn it to 0.5. So now, whenever I move it up, this control only moves 50% of it, which means also if I can click on this, it will only move 0.5. So that way, if I want to move the hips around, I get way more like fleshiness. And honestly, if I do, yeah. And so then what I would do is I would take this octopus cog group, shift select this main control, edit parent. So now if I select this, everything moves with it. So just like in your initial animation, original animation, this control, the one that you animated, would move everything. The only difference is if I wanted to move the head or the cog, it would be this thing. This would move the neck, the head, all of that. And this would be in world space, or I guess not world space. This would be in global control space. And then I would be able to animate this hip control individually of my cog. So then you're able to actually, like, if you're wanting to like snake him and you want to keep the head like straight and you want to be able to move like the hips or rotate the hips. So like this gives you way more freedom because now your, cog isn't just moving everything like that. And so if you wanted to get even fancier with it, you could possibly even, let me check this out. Child, constrain parent. you could even constrain those useless IK tentacles to this main control. Nah, that's not going to work. Never mind, I'm dumb. But hopefully you get the idea of like what I'm going for, of like this control is what I would animate for like the neck. And then I would go up to neck 03 control to animate this. And then even go up here to animate this. And then for the legs and hips and all that, I would just rotate this control. Because for an octopus, how did I get so smart? Animating a ton of shots and being lazy and not wanting to do the manual work to do it, and also having crappy rigs. And so being forced to just think, how do I make my life easier? That's the honest answer. I was working at a small VFX studio with very low budget dinosaur rigs, and I was doing like 800 to 900 frames a day of dinosaur shots. And so I was like, okay, how can I make this IK spine work better? And so I literally just started mixing and mashing different rig techniques together until I got rigs that kind of worked for me. So, oh, that's a nice squash and stretch head. I like that a lot. That's kind of cool. But I also very much work within the IK. So like this is all very FK setup. And I like using IK, and I like things being like squashy and stretchy. So like for me personally, I would like to translate this control and be able to like move it around. But since I can't do that, I would probably set up a second constraint system. NURBS primitive, circle. Match all transform. And I would probably make this my head control. And I would do parent, child, constrain, and then parent, child, constrain. This one's already parented. And so this one I would set a 0.5 blend parent on, so that way I could do this and actually have like squashing and stretching in the neck and the head. Because for me, rather than animating 3 controls to get the exact same effect, I'd rather just animate 1 control. And if I even wanted to, I could even do parent, child, constrain, parent, and have 2 constraints. One would be the head, the other would be the hips, and I could just turn the head to 0.2. And then I would be able to, like, you know, have just 1 head control. And that way, whenever I rotate it, I only have to animate 1 curve, and I get this really nice, like, fleshy animation in the rest of the neck. Yeah, essentially it's a do-it-yourself IK system. And so then, because if you move this now, this doesn't move along, well then I'm going to want to put this child parent underneath this hierarchy. And since this hierarchy is now underneath this hierarchy, now I can move this, now I can move this, and now I can move this. So now it's 2 controls instead of 4, and it's going to save me a crap ton of time. And now I'm able to also still animate this control. So there you go. So I don't know if that was helpful at all. Probably not, since you're this far into blocking, but I thought I would point it out because you could do this exact same thing on your shot as is. And just bake it to a cube, bake it to the NURBS curve, do the constraints on it. It would still work beautifully, perfectly. It's a lot of work if you don't want to deal with that. But for future reference, for everybody watching, I was like, you know what? Might as well show you guys just in case it's helpful. But do you have any other questions or anything on that, Kane? Or I think everything else is looking really solid. So I think just those couple things that I want you to look for this week as you move on to the next stage of blocking, I think you should be good. Yeah, I feel you, Kane. Because, like, that's kind of my big thing is it's like, if I do 80% simplifying before I start my shot, it's going to save me 80% of my time blocking. Like if I get this rig here and I'm like, okay, this has 8 billion controls and this is going to make splining 50 hours harder. I would be better off spending a couple hours modifying this rig to work for me the way my brain works than it would to work with a rig that I don't like and then have to deal with not fully getting how to spline this whenever I get into the blocking phase. Or splining phase, sorry. So that's what I would do. I'm trying to think of a way. Yeah, that'd be too complicated. But yeah, this is honestly what I would do for this. And then boop. Boop. He's back to normal. But yeah. Really great work, Kane, this week. And let me know if you have any questions or anything like that. If not, I had Sanjana, I had Kane. Next we have, hey, thanks for showing up, Abe. Next we have this one and this one. Cool. Let me see. Okay, so we have Animation Addict, which will be a walk cycle. Yes, I can accidentally walk you through that super quick, Kane, of how you would switch that over. Because I'm dumb and I forgot that that would probably be something you'd want to do. So let me open that up. And then I'm going to do a walk cycle for Animation Addict, and then I'm going to go over splining for Pratham. So got a nice stream today. Lots of people showing up, lots of talking, lots of shots to look at. Life is good. So download Octopus. Skip, 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 skip. Okay, so turn off lights, textures. Okay. So the way I would bake that over, if I were you, is I would just start, I would turn my scene to -50 just to be safe. Select everything, make sure I key everything on frame 1, frame -50. And then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to zero out all my controls to where he's back into T-pose. So now that he's into T-pose, I'm going to go over a couple base concepts that are important to remember. This is good to go. Okay. So a couple base concepts for me is, okay, controls. If I'm going to be creating my own controls, how am I going to move it where I want without putting values on it, right? So if I create a NURBS curve, right, and I scale it up, I move it here. Okay, this is where I want it. Now it's got attributes in here. I could go to modify freeze transformations, but then that's going to break the rotation orientation and sometimes break the translation orientation. So what I do whenever I create controllers for rigs, I go create NURBS circle. So I'm going to call this octopus _COG. And then I'm going to control G group. And I'm going to call it octopus _COG _GRP. So now I'm actually moving a group and I can scale it up. I can translate it. And I'm just going to go to this control, modify match transforms. Oops. Modify match translation. That's what I wanted. Okay, so there we go. So now my actual control is zeroed out at the 0 point, but there's translations and scale on the group, which doesn't matter because I'm not moving the group around. And so now what I need to do is go ahead and just duplicate this group, Control D, and I'm going to call this octopus head underscore GRP. And I'm going to call this octopus head CTRL for control. And I'm going to go ahead and call this control as well. There we go. So now we have both controls, and for my own taste, I like scaling down this control, so I'm going to scale down the group just a little bit. And then I'm going to, yes, you can. So that's the thing, is I can freeze transforms on the group, but that's not going to mess up the rotation or orientation of the actual control itself. So yeah, that's a good point, Alan. I can just freeze transformations if I wanted to on the group. So then, modify freeze transformations. My rotations and translations of this control are still intact. So boom, there we go. We are good to go with the controls. So now I have them where I want, and I could start putting constraints on them, but as soon as I start constraining these controls, right? These controls have animation on them, right? These have values on them right here. So if I constrain them, your animation is going to be gone. You're not going to have your animation anymore. Yeah, it is cleaner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what controls I need, what controls I want the animation from, and I'm going to bake those out to cubes. Then I'm going to do my constraints, and then I'm going to bake the new controls to the cubes. So for example, these controls here, these two, these are just going to be in-betweens of these two controls, because what I was talking about of baking controls down to fewer controls to get simpler animation. So this one's going to control this control. This one's going to control this one. And then this is going to control the head in this one. So to put it simply, I need to bake a cube to... This control has nothing on it, which is good. So I just need to keep this control and this control's animation. So let's go ahead and just create Polygon Cube, modify, match all transforms, scale the cube up. There we go. Set a key on it, and then I'm just going to use Xform copy, bake all keys. I could also just do a constraint. Yes, I can show in the outliner. Windows, outliner. I can just dock this right here, and there we go. Cool beans. So, where is my cube? Where'd it go? There it is. So I could also do this with a my constraint where instead of using Xform, which is way quicker and easier, I could do parent, child, constrain. Oh, really? I have to ban someone else? Sad. It gives me a weird sense of power banning people. Anyway, so I could do parent, child, constrain, turn blend parent on, key every 4 frames, and then delete the constraint. Xform is easier for demo purposes, so I'm just going to do that. So now I have this cube perfectly following the control I need. And I can turn it to stepped mode just for demo purposes. Turn it to stepped. And we are good to go. It's following perfectly. Cool beans. And if I was to be tidy, if I was a decent human being, I would call this hip underscore anim underscore bake. And then I'm going to Control D duplicate. Now I'm going to go to the head. modify match translation, modify match rotation, and then I'm just going to scale it down, set a key, and I'm just going to call this head underscore anim underscore bake, and I'm going to shift click the head, copy, bake all keys. Okay. So now that I have both of these following, which again, I need to set both these guys to stepped. There we go. The neck and the head animation is baked to cubes and is working perfectly. So now we just need to remember a couple things. Kane animated these controls because these controls move everything, right? So again, what I was talking about before, if these controls are controlling everything, I'm going to need these controls to control both of these controls, or else I'm going to lose animation through hierarchy. So first things first is I'm going to do the constraints. I'm going to go ahead and hide these cubes for now, do the constraints, parent, and then bake out. So parent, child, constrain, parent. So now this bad boy controls him. Parent, constrain, parent. So now this controls both of these controls. Now I'm going to go to the channel box, turn blend parent to 0.5 on this one so that I get this nice fall off. And that way, whenever I animate these controls, I get a nice fall off. That was weird. And so now parent, child, constrain, parent. Now this is controlling the head. Parent, child, constrain, parent. So now this is controlling the neck as well. And so this is now where you get into a double constraint. So if you constrain one object to do different objects, it's going to split it 50-50. So if I'm doing this, I don't want this controller following exactly with the head. I want it to be split. So right now I have head control, parent, this control child, right? Octopus head control is constraining this control. So if I now take the hip or cog control, parent, child, constrain, parent, now there are two constraints battling over control of this control here, which means when I move this, it's only moving 50%. Half of it's being controlled by this guy. The other half is being controlled by the head, which is exactly what I want. So now that that's done and over with, if I move this guy, it's not going to move. So now I'm going to take the octopus cog group, select this control, and in the outliner, you can see I'm just going to edit parent. So now this guy moves this guy, and then I'm going to select this octopus head group, select this control, edit, parent. So now if I move this control, it works. If I move this control, it works. Boom, everything's working exactly as I want it to. But now if I play the animation, we have a problem because there's no head animation anymore, or neck animation. Well, that's where the bake animation cubes come to. So we have hip anim bake, turn on, head anim bake, turn on. We still have that animation, they're just on cubes. And since our zero pose is the exact same, I can take this control, which is the hips, shift select the cube, copy, bake all keys. And now I can take head control, cube, copy, bake all keys. And so now that the animation is baked, theoretically, I've got the same animation, it's just in splined. So I need to turn that to stepped. Flip it to stepped. The other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this control, I'm going to go rotation order, flip the rotation orders to best, just for a good practice, and then pray that it works because it's on stream and I'm going to look like an idiot if it doesn't work. Shot cam, none. Okay, let's see if this works. Yeah, I can show you the constraints listed. So if you're looking at, let me go ahead and delete the cubes. This guy. And if you're wondering why I'm manually opening these, it's because I accidentally broke my expand all hotkey, I think. Oh, no, I didn't. Never mind. Never mind. Okay, so if you can see, this neck control has a neck O1, neck O2 parent constraint, which means that this is 1 and this is 1. This one here literally just has one neck constraint here. So it all works very nicely, having essentially 3 controls that you have to animate instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 controls. So there you go. And so now that everything is baked out properly, then you just have to go through and animate your shot, which for me would be 10 times easier because now I can just grab this head control and I can move this guy however I want. I can take the hip control. I can move this however I want. And then I can shake this control and move this however I want. So hopefully that's helpful, Kane. One other thing that I would also do, just for quality of life, is I would then go through and select the hip control, parent, child, all of these stupid broken IK these IK things, because they rotate with the FK and you're using only FK, what happens is you move the FK and for some reason the IK moves with only in rotate X, which totally breaks the use of your FK. So I would go through and do parent, child, and literally just constrain the IK controls to the hips. Parent, child, constrain, parent, parent, child, constrain, parent. Parent. Boom. So there you go. Now all my IK weird tentacle root IK controls are constrained to this. So now whenever I move it, they follow with. That way, whenever I move these controls, they only move around what I want, right? Which is ideal. And strangely enough, these controls do not follow. That is a weird thing of the rig. But anyway, that way, whenever you move this around, then you can move these tentacles down, and you shouldn't have any problem at all posing the legs out like you were having earlier. So yeah, no problem, Kane. Hopefully it helps. Like, that's kind of my thing, is like setting things up, re-rigging bad rigs. So yeah, if you ever need help re-rigging a rig, hit me up. So with that, I think I'll now, unless you have any more questions, Kane, also feel free to refer back to the video. I will save it and upload it. That way, you know, if you need to refer back on the steps, you can take a look. So I'll probably also highlight it and put it as a demo just so people can get to it quick.